And as promised, we are back today, Charmaine and I. Hi, Charmaine.
Hi, Francesca.
We are back. And last time we talked about hoovering and love bombing, but we left and said we were going to discuss trauma bonding, what it is, and how it kind of connects with hoovering. So, what would you like to share about trauma bonding?
Trauma bonding is when, you get addicted to that whole push and pull that we've spoken about in a previous episode, and the release of serotonin and cortisol. Now, when you get that whole push and pull thing, and when you're getting that affection, you're getting that hormone that makes you feel good. And then when you're being pushed away, you're getting high levels of cortisol. So when you get that cortisol, that is when your body thinks that it's going flight or fight, and that kind of feeling kind of gets you addicted, I would say.
Yeah, it's so we have talked in the past about love bombing. That is how typically narcissistic relationship starts, or relationships with a narcissistic person, abusive person. They will love bomb you and they'll shower you, and you get addicted to that feeling special, to all of that attention and love. So when, like you said, Shemaine, when there is the distancing, whether you're being discarded or when there's a breakup, you start missing that, and that's what pulls you back in. And it is apparently it is equivalent to a drug addiction and not getting your dose of drugs, like you said, the cortisol, the dopamine. And it can feel absolutely devastating if you're not getting that fix. And that's what often brings people back into an abusive relationship. Is not It's not the abuse, but it's the feeling they're missing, the that love bombing feeling that you were addicted to initially. So yeah, it's like fantasizing. That's like Stockholm Syndrome, kind of the same thing, right? And I think I don't have the definition of Stockholm Syndrome. I should look it up. Do you know what it is? So it came from
We know what it is, but
yeah.
explaining it
I,
to get the exact definition is a little
I
complicated.
think it came from Stockholm Syndrome. Here we go. I'm going to look it up. I think it originally, it was based on, here, let me just read it because I think I know it, but I don't want to just go. Okay, so Stockholm Syndrome is a coping mechanism to a captive or abusive situation. People develop positive feelings towards their captors or abusers over time. This condition applies to situations including child abuse, coach athlete abuse, relationship abuse, and sex trafficking. Yeah, so that's what it is. Why it's called that, I think it is named after an example of someone who was kidnapped and fell in love with their captors. I think that's why it's called that, but I'm not sure. I can't find that information right now. But yeah, in a nutshell, that's what it is. And that's what what can get people stuck in an abusive relationship, or it happens a lot when there is that breakup. So when the victim gets discarded, mainly that's when it happens. Not the only time, but when the victim gets discarded, they're feeling alone. They're missing whatever it is that they're missing, and they're willing to put up with the abuse for the sake of getting that tiny bit of feeling. Like I said before, it is equated to a drug addiction. So when that happens, it has to be treated the same way, right? We have to look at, okay, what's the problem here? The problem is not that you're being discarded. The problem is that you're seeking validation, some sort of feeling worth. Your worth depends on being around this other person who at some point made you feel like you were worth something. And trauma bonding, it to me personally, I think is a huge red flag for yourself to recognize that this is like alarm bells going on. It's like, pay attention, pay attention. You are missing something. What you're missing is not dependent on someone else. What you're actually missing is from inside yourself. You're not giving it to yourself first. So you're trying to pull it from other people. So that's kind of the sign where you have to start paying attention to yourself and get help. Nurture yourself. Put yourself, give yourself enough value to take care of yourself more than putting yourself at harm's length. So, any thoughts?
When you feel that you're being trauma bonded, or you feel like you need to go back and get your fix from your abuser, that you feel you need affection only from that one source, that is when you need to step back. As Francesca said, you need to step back and look at what's happening really. That is when you need to start slowly chipping away your emotions and start detaching yourself. So this is where we had mentioned about detaching from your abuser, and that is so important. So when the trauma bonding starts, the best thing to do is to start detaching. Once the detachment has taken place completely, then you will not feel that need to return to get your fix. You don't need validation from anybody else but yourself. So once that whole detachment thing is over, you will realize that the only person who needs to validate you is you. And that is, I'm saying it from personal experience, because I have also gone through this, where I felt the need that to make myself feel really good, that I needed affection from my abuser, just to like feel like he knows that I'm existing, he knows that I'm here. And so when he pushes me away and then he pulls me back and he pushes me away, I'm getting that um, my affection. So there are good moments and bad moments, but it was not affecting, I mean, it was not affecting me in a very positive manner. And I could feel myself getting more and more stressed out when the period started extending. So I would go without getting any validation or affection weeks on end, and sometimes months, and that would stress me out. And that is not how anyone should have to feel. So the detachment really helped with that. So when I wasn't getting any attention or any validation from him, and my detachment process had already taken place, it didn't matter anymore. And that is how you need to be, where you self validate. That's really important.
Yeah. It's also there's also another side of it that I forgot to mention before, is that when you're trauma bonded, let's say you're separated from your abuser and you have this trauma bond, this very strong feeling of wanting to go back, like you feel like you can't live without the other person, you're going to die if you don't have the other person. I feel like it's the end of your life. What's happening is you romanticize what that relationship was like, and you forget all the bad side, or you minimize it and all you see is the good side, all the happy times, and you forget the bad times. And you give more validity to the good times than the bad times, and the hurt and the pain and the physical or emotional injury. But you're blinding you're putting in the dark the abuse. So by it's important to understand that if we are in a trauma bond spot, that that's what's happening. And if we can recognize that, wait a minute, what I'm doing is I'm actually excusing the abuse by just looking at the good part, right? Doesn't work. Doesn't work. The good is not going to cancel the evil. I know there's a lot of political stuff going on, so I'm not going to get into that. But I just recently heard somebody justify Hitler, saying that, oh, but Hitler did a lot of good things. Well, that doesn't justify the bad things he did. Just the same, and the same goes for relationships. All right. So it's just the same example. So if somebody kills somebody and does a lot of good things, well, they still killed somebody. If they willfully went out there, beat somebody, hurt them on purpose, they're still a bad person. Right. So it's important not to put a shadow or kind of say, oh, but the person does all this, they provide, or they do this and they do that. I grew up with that. Actually, I grew up with that culture where if you know, in my culture, it's traditional marriages where it was usually, you know, the stay-at-home mom. And if she was being abused, it's like, oh, but he's a good provider. You know, he pays all the bills and he takes care of the family by providing everything else. Yeah, but not providing safety. Okay, not providing safety. There's, you know, like, so it's important to really be objective and not justify the unjustifiable. Yeah. So I'm going to leave it at that. So if you have more to add, it's all yours, Charmaine.
So when you're justifying your abuser, you're actually creating an illusion for yourself. So, I mean, when you realize what you're doing, you need to look at things more realistically, look at them for the way they are, because your abuser has already created this illusion and you're already sucked into it. And this is you making excuses. And the moment you find yourself making excuses, that's a red flag. You need to take a step back and look at things from outside of the box in a more realistic manner. Okay, but he might have done one good thing, but he's done a whole string of bad things. And how did those bad things make you feel at that time? And that is how you slowly step back. And by the time you've taken more and more steps, you're already way out of the place you've already been in for so long.
Yeah. Cool. I think we're going to leave it at that. I think we've given enough for this episode on this topic. And for anyone who wants to know more, as always, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We have resources. I mean, there's lots of resources online as well, but we have resources as well. So feel free to reach out and we will help in whichever way we can. What matters to us is that you're safe and you live a happy, fulfilling life, because life is short and it's not meant to be miserable. It's meant to be lived in joy, and you're meant to grow fully, not be suppressed. So I'll leave you with that till next episode. Bye for now.